Good afternoon, enthusiasts, and it is finally December, and at this time of year, I like to look back and reflect on my past year as a roller coaster enthusiast. As of recording this video, I have been on 58 different roller coasters across 9 different parks around the US. And on today's video, I wanted to take a look at all the parks I've been to and rank them from worst to best based off my opinion. So how exactly do I rank all these parks? Well, I have 4 criteria for each park, and that is 1. Roller coasters, 2. Flat rides, 3. Atmosphere, and 4. Operations. For me personally, these are the 4 things that I look for the most when going to a park. Alright, let's get right into it with number 9, Arnold's Park in Arnold's Park, Iowa. Before I go any further, this park is not bad by any means, it's just that someone had to be last, and unfortunately, that was Arnold's Park. As far as roller coasters go, this park is pretty small, so there's only 3 roller coasters. The best one here is obviously Legend, which is a very old wooden coaster, which is surprisingly smooth for its age, and it has like one good airtime moment thanks to the buzz bar restraints, but it's basically just a family coaster. Their other roller coaster is a very old Wild Mouse coaster, which is cool for its age, but it's super rough and not very enjoyable. And the third coaster is a kiddie coaster, so who cares about that? As far as flat rides go, they do have a log flume, which smelled bad, but anyway. They have a Ferris wheel, a carousel, and your basic typical carnival rides. Where this park really excels at is presentation. This park's atmosphere is great. It has good vibes, it's very old school, it's very refreshing, and it is very beautiful next to the Lake Okoboji. As for operations, the staff here is very friendly, very welcoming, and I went to this park on a very dead day, so there wasn't any urgency for fast operations, but they were still very efficient. Number 8 is Frontier City in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. This is the smallest Six Flags park I've been to, and it's probably going to be that way for the foreseeable future. This park is tiny, but they do have some solid roller coasters like Diamondback, which is a very rare aero shuttle loop coaster, and it has some great ejector airtime and a forceful loop, so that is the best ride in the park in my opinion. Silver Bullet is a close second. It has a good forceful loop and maybe one airtime moment, but the rest of the ride is just kind of okay. Some other roller coasters here include Wildcat. This roller coaster was disappointing. Steel Lasso has the role of being the park's family coaster, and it does the job very well. And there's also a kiddie coaster, but whatever. Gunslinger is by far the best flat ride here, and it's one of my favorite flat rides in general. There's also a log flume, Ferris wheel, a super loop. I hate these things, but anyways, there's also a zip line, which I think is very unique for a park like this. Just like Arnold's Park, Frontier City's main strength is the atmosphere. For a Six Flags park, it looks very good. I mean, sure, it's right next to an interstate, but if you look past that, it's actually a cute little park. It's too bad that the operations here aren't as good, and the merchandise in the gift shops suck, so looking past that though, it's still a decent park. Number 7 is Mount Olympus in Wisconsin Dells, Wisconsin. So you're probably wondering why I put this park so low, but I'll get to that in a minute. But first off, the roller coaster collection here is great. Hades 360, Zeus, and Cyclops are a great top 3. Hades 360 is still my favorite wooden coaster. Zeus and Cyclops are also great. Pegasus does suck though, and they do have a kiddie coaster, I guess, but it's really the top 3 in this park that really matter. The flat ride collection is lackluster at best. Yes, there is a sky coaster, which is an upcharge by the way, and speaking of upcharges, their S&S Screamin' Swing is also an upcharge, which was just insulting to me. There's also a giant swing thing and go-karts too, but other than that, there isn't much here. This park also just doesn't look that good, like the presentation is just not there. Sure, the area by Hades and Zeus looks fine, but if you go past that to the main section of the park, it's just so barren and boring. I am also not a fan of the operations at this park. Like, I have no idea if it was just my visit, but I literally saw no security guard at the front gate checking bags or tickets, which in my opinion is a big safety concern. The dispatches were also slow because for every roller coaster here except Hades, they only had one operator per ride, which if you've been to any other park, you probably know that one operator per roller coaster is a huge no-no. Oh, and there was also one train ops on literally every roller coaster here. And the trains they do have on the roller coasters didn't really look like they were in the greatest conditions. So to sum this park up, I really don't think safety is their #1 priority. If this park did not have Hades or Zeus, it would definitely be last place on this list. Number 6 is Adventureland in Altoona, Iowa. If you're looking for roller coasters, you can't go wrong with Monster. In my opinion, Monster is probably one of the best Gerslauers in North America, and it's still in my personal top 25. After Monster though, the rest of the roller coaster collection is definitely less impressive. Outlaw is a small-scale CCI, which has some decent airtime thanks to the buzz bar restraints, but in my opinion, it was a very short and forgettable ride, unfortunately. Tornado is probably one of the worst wooden coasters I've been on. Despite having buzz bar restraints, this roller coaster had zero airtime. It was very rough and it just crawled through the layout. It was not a good ride. I went to this park back in 2019, so Dragon was still there, and Dragon was also a very bad ride. And Phoenix was also there, but it was closed when I went, but it looks pretty fun. And yes, I know there's Dragon Slayer now, which also looks pretty fun. But overall, the roller coaster collection is kind of top heavy. But there is some decent flat rides here, like there is an S&S Space Shot, and there's a Mondial Windseeker called Storm Chaser, which was also pretty fun. There was also some other flat rides around which looked pretty cool, but I didn't really see them a whole lot during my 2019 visit, unfortunately. But let's just say it's definitely a whole lot better than Mount Olympus. In terms of atmosphere, this park it's alright. I mean, it's not bad by any means. It's certainly better than Mount Olympus for sure, and it's actually kind of charming in some areas, but other areas were a little cheesy, but for the most part, it was pretty decent. For operations at this park, it was hit or miss. The monster operations were amazing, but the dragon operations and tornado were kind of inefficient in my opinion, but hey, the staff was very nice and I really appreciated that. Number 5, Nickelodeon Universe at Mall of America in Bloomington, Minnesota. Best roller coaster here is, in my opinion, Rock Bottom Plunge, which is a small-scaled Gerstlauer Eurofighter, which, you know, isn't the best ride in the world by any means, but it's still a very fun time. And then there's Avatar Airbender, which is an intimate half-pipe coaster. It's a very simple but very fun ride. Fairly Odd Coaster is a Gerstlauer spinning coaster, which has some potholes here and there, but if you get a good seat, you'll be laughing the entire ride. It's a perfect fit for this park. Pepsi Orange Streak doesn't really do anything except to give you a tour of the park, but yeah, that's pretty much it. For an indoor theme park, the flat rides here are great. Brain Surge is still a guilty pleasure of mine. Shell Shock always puts a smile on my face because it's just so fun. And the log chute at this place is probably one of the best log flumes in the entire country. It's definitely the best water ride in Minnesota, and I love it every time. There's also a small drop tower called Splatosphere and a Ferris wheel, and there's also Shredder's Mutant Masher, which looks pretty fun, but I haven't been on it yet. For atmosphere, this park rocks. Just being in the biggest mall in America is enough, but just the liveliness around this park is just so amazing. There's sunlight coming through the roof, There's actual trees planted everywhere, and the pathways are painted bright orange, and it just feels good to be in this park. For operations, I really have no complaints. Every time I go, they always seem to be doing a good job. So anyway, moving on. Number 4, Worlds of Fun in Kansas City, Missouri. The first Cedar Fair park on this list, and let me tell you, Worlds of Fun is definitely a good time. Prowler is one of my favorite wooden coasters. I wouldn't call it elite, but I would call it A+ tier. It is by far the best roller coaster in the park in my opinion. Mamba may be my least favorite hypercoaster, but the first half on this ride is actually really good. Patriot may be a weaker B&M invert, but the inversions are very enjoyable and it is so smooth. It's too bad that I did not like Timberwolf that much. I mean, the airtime was good, but the roller coaster was just rough and I did not have the best experience on this ride. Spinning Dragons is basically the same thing as Fairly Odd Coaster, but it's smoother, and Boomerang is a piece of crap. As far as flat rides go, there is some good stuff here, like there's an S&S Drop Tower, there's also a Mondial Windseeker, and there's some good water rides, but overall, I really wasn't paying attention to all the rides here, but I'm pretty sure that I've heard from some people that the flat rides here are pretty great. For atmosphere, the park is very loosely themed to different parts of the world, and I say loosely because the theming isn't that great, but it does get the job done, I guess. I just have no idea why they put a diner in the African theme section. Like, come on, Cedar Fair. Anyway, the park's layout is kind of confusing at first. I had a hard time finding Prowler, but if you get used to it, it's fine, I guess. The park's landscaping is actually pretty good, I will say that. Overall, it's a good looking park. As for operations, for a Cedar Fair park, it was kind of disappointing because they had one train ops on every roller coaster except Mamba and Patriot. And keep in mind, I was there on a very busy Saturday, so it was kind of disappointing to see only one train on Prowler, Timberwolf, and other rides, but hey, it's whatever. Number 3, ValleyFair in Shakopee, Minnesota. Now, this is my home park, so naturally I have some great memories here, and ValleyFair is actually very similar to Worlds of Fun, but in my opinion, the roller coaster lineup and everything else on this park is just a tad better than Worlds of Fun. The star of the show is of course Renegade by far in my opinion. This roller coaster just has so much airtime. It's definitely an elite tier GCI, just a excellent ride indeed. Wild Thing is just like Mamba, except I like it a little better. Steel Venom is a great launch coaster with great forwards and backwards launches with the hold brake, just a pure adrenaline rush. Excalibur, you either like it or hate it, but me personally, I love this thing. High Roller is a very fun ride for its age, and Corkscrew is very enjoyable, albeit a little bit outdated. And I'm not the biggest fan of Mad Mouse. For flat rides, we have Power Tower, which is an S&S combo tower. We have Extreme Swing, the original S&S Screamin' Swing, and a fantastic ride. There's also North Star, Thunder Canyon, The Wave, Northern Lights, Ripcord, and this thing. I hate this ride. All things considered, ValleyFair does have a great selection of flat rides. ValleyFair also does very well in the atmosphere department. This park just looks good. The rides look great, the landscaping is very nice, and the park just has a good vibe to it. This was the second Cedar Fair park, and you can tell because there's some old Cedar Fair charm in this park. For operations, ValleyFair is hit or miss. There have been some times where the operations absolutely knock it out of the park, but there's been other times where it could have been better. Overall though, I just love ValleyFair. Number 2, Six Flags Over Texas in Arlington, Texas. This was my first ever Six Flags park, and I walked away actually impressed. For roller coasters, we have first and foremost New Texas Giant, and I recently did a coaster review on this ride, so definitely go watch that. But for now, wow, this roller coaster is amazing. Shockwave is the park's wild card. Like, seriously, you'll be surprised of how much airtime you get on those dips and just how intense those loops are. Titan is one of the most hated hypercoasters out there, but I actually like it. Yeah, the mid-course brake run sucks, but that upward helix, it has bone-crushing positive Gs, and there's a little bit of floater airtime here and there. Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast is still one of my favorite launch coasters. The backwards launch is insane, and the roller coaster by itself is just intense. And speaking of intense, Batman the Ride. This is their cloned B&M invert, and you know what? It's a great fit for this park. There's also other roller coasters like Joker, Judgeway Scream, Pandemonium, Runaway Mountain, Runaway Mine Train, Mini Mine Train, La Vibora. These roller coasters are hit or miss, but the top 5 at this park is spectacular. There's also good flat rides too, like there's an S&S Combo Tower, there's the original Log Flume, which is pretty cool just by itself, and there's a Zamperla Discovery, a freaking 400-foot Funtime Star Flyer. Like, come on. Atmosphere-wise, this park looks great besides the Gotham City section, which really wasn't my cup of tea, but the rest of the park, for a Six Flags park, it looks pretty good. This was the original Six Flags park after all, so there is some charm to it. And operations, I really have no complaints. Number 1, Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. Was there any doubt that this park would be number 1? Like, come on, it's literally Cedar Point. First off, Steel Vengeance and Maverick is hands down the best 1-2 punch of any park. Steel Vengeance is my personal number 1, and Maverick is a close second. These two roller coasters are just masterpieces. But wait, there's more. There's also Millennium Force, which was the original Giga coaster, and even though the newer Gigas have surpassed it, it is still one heck of a ride, and I love it. Magnum XL 200 was the original hypercoaster, and yes, it is kind of awkward and bumpy, but those airtime hills are lethal. Raptor is my favorite B&M invert. I love the inversions, the color scheme, everything about this ride. Rougarou is an underrated gem in my opinion. Gatekeeper is fun and it looks gorgeous next to the front gate and the beach. And even though that Wicked Twister is gone, I still cherish all my memories with this roller coaster. Valraven has a good drop and an excellent 0G roll. Gemini still has a few tricks up its sleeve with the airtime, and I love the racing aspect. Oh yeah, Top Thrill Dragster. This roller coaster was closed when I went, unfortunately, but I look forward to riding this in the future, and I bet it ranks highly on Cedar Point's awesome coaster lineup. There's also more roller coasters like Blue Streak, Corkscrew, Cedar Creek Mine Ride, Iron Dragon. These roller coasters are fine, just not super noteworthy. The roller coaster collection is top notch. It is the roller coaster capital of the world after all, but there's also some good flat rides. Power Tower, Slingshot, Windseeker, Skyhawk, Max Air, and so much more. And this park's atmosphere, it's Cedar Point. Just being in a park with this much history and all these incredible roller coasters everywhere you look, it's a magical feeling. This was the original and arguably the most favored Cedar Fair park, and you can tell because they really do put a lot of love into this park. From the landscaping, to the nice employees, to just the very beautiful skyline, and the setting on Lake Erie is the icing on the cake. The operations are incredible at this park. It's Cedar Point, so they take pride in their fast, efficient operations, and honestly, these are the best operations in the world. So overall, I love Cedar Point, and I'm looking forward to coming back to this park and finally riding Top Thrill Dragster. But there you have it. That is all the parks I've been to, ranked from worst to best based off my opinion in 2021. So what do you guys think of my list? Make sure to comment down below, and if you enjoyed today's video, please give it a like. And before you go, if you're new here, please subscribe. It would really help out a lot. With that said, take it easy, and I'll see you next time on North Star Coasters.